Looking at the broader US China chip race, how quickly are Chinese companies closing the gap with the US in terms of chip sophistication and performance?
On the category of high-end frontier chips, the best estimates suggest that China's chip makers are about 2 to 3 generations behind, or at least 5 years behind. But if you then flip over to more of the mature, older chips that are found in many electronics devices, the difference between China and the US becomes quite marginal, maybe 1 to 2 generations at best. So it really depends on what kind of chips we're talking about and for what kind of use cases. Now, China would openly admit that it has this gap, but it's interesting to see that at the end of last year, in December 2025, China also introduced its own 50% rule. This is whereby they have asked Chinese companies to indigenize and for fabs to source about half of their equipment domestically and source the rest of their equipment internationally and on the global market. This is basically an admission that China is behind, that they're aware of the gap, and that they will be using foreign equipment and product as needed in the short term, but longer term, they will not be deterred from moving towards full indigenous production end to end.
The US Commerce Secretary recently said that NVIDIA's powerful H200 chips have not yet been sold to Chinese firms, even after the Trump administration lifted restrictions on them in January. Do you agree with the argument made by some officials that restricting sales helps slow Chinese competitors, or could it instead accelerate China's push for chip self reliance?
I think you have to see all of this in a broader historical context of China's ambitions. China has had a concerted strategy of technology self sufficiency for decades now. It is a strategy that far predates the Trump administration and far predates the latest export control action from the US. I think you're referring in particular to the former White House AI czar, David Sachs's comments, where he basically said that if we can get China addicted to US chips, it will deter them from becoming more competitive and trying to make their own. Now, I certainly don't buy that argument if I look at the historical arc of what China is trying to achieve. China is not going to be deterred.
Now, how will these conversations on AI chips influence the upcoming Trump Xi meeting next month, where both sides want to see wins on trade?
Now, the Match Act is just one of a raft of different export control measures being considered by committees in the US Congress this month, just ahead of that Xi Trump meeting. I do wonder whether this is intended in part to strengthen the US's negotiating position ahead of that conversation, or whether it might actually invite some more retaliatory action from China. We've seen over the past year that China is quite willing to weaponize its own strongholds on global supply chains, particularly its stranglehold on rare earths and magnets.